Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 11th of August, and we had this rising shakeout that started to fade. Now we're reaching lower shakeout readings on equal or higher highs. That's not a positive thing for the market. The salvation has been our little cyan right here, which indicates our short interest staying below the red. Now, even if red is declining and the short interest is dropping here and staying underneath it, we're still in a bullish mode. So from that standpoint, we're not expecting a whole lot. We finally had the first activation here in the pre-market of short-term buyers. So short-term buyers mixed with mid-term buyers, that's enough to give you a decent push. It's what led to this breakout move right over here just, last week. So worth noting, NQ still strong, no question about that one. And the Dow behind on all of them, but looking more and more like the S&P. So catching, but you can see that difference there. And what's going to happen is when this starts to fade, we're going to get a little bit stronger pullback, and that's where these ABM values you can see now after the number 2 buy stop has already exceeded the height there now. The fast line up at 18,458, but even if you're doing the middle, it's still 18,400, so still a good 100 points away from where current price is now. I said not to expect much from this USO move, and sure enough, that's exactly why it's already begun to pull back. It's just ebb and flow of this dead cat bounce, whether there's need, but there's just no economic growth in the world at this particular point that's attracting any interest whatsoever. Gold's just going to remain flat. Some people are still going to be gravitating to it as a hedge against negative rates, whatever, and it's not going to work that well. TLT moving back towards its highs because, again, if you're still looking for safety, no yield or borderline negative yield, if you throw in tax to it, it's a crazy, crazy time. Euro, right back in the same middle spot is exactly where we expect. It's actually at the higher of the range that we've been in recently, but still well within the confines that we had here between the 115 and 108 range. In fact, we didn't even quite get back down to the full lows. We did completely retest all of the dips below the red line, so that is an issue. And we had this move back over here, and we had it come down in a single day move that came close. It wasn't quite exactly to it, but not bad. Still close enough to, I always look for 80% of those from a retrace standpoint, and certainly got there. From the case standpoint, we had a stop up there. It was all the way up to about the 72 range. We dipped below it, but then we ended up with the new buys coming right back above the green ABM. Beautiful little play there. So not bad. And then we've been showing this one. Let me see if I disable this. Let me reduce this one. You can kind of see what we were talking about from our adjusted Power Mode 2, which is going to be incorporated into the paint bar as it stands. And we talk about these chaos events and what their implications are when we come down and make the crossovers, and our little dotted line gives us the direction. So if that's fading and we're below this magenta, then that's exactly the direction we expect. Now, within that, we ended up immediately after with a turnaround move as it was starting to go up and just started to pop back a little bit right there. But immediately after that, we got down. This was interesting because we were getting all this all at the same time, which indicated that there was a massive confluence of algo activity when you have this happen in such a short distance, because we can go back and I can show you the chart that just doesn't happen in this kind of frequency. And so what we were talking about is when you reach this peak and you have this down move, until that peak is taken out, that's the expected continuation. We ended up with a secondary short setup that came right here, and then it turned around and we ended up with a peak high that went past it right here, and we had the rising dot. So that indicated that the bias had flipped more bullish right about this point and has maintained that bullish bias going through here, because we haven't taken out the peak. And the easiest way to do that, let me just draw it, is you go to the highest peak. It's a little bit dip right. Oop, one too many. There we go. So straight line, and so this would be the peak on it is 11. I don't know if I can get that. There we go. 1168 is the plus 168, and so none of these peaks have taken that out. The highest one being 9. So until it does, you're there, or until you get a reset that goes below the line. Now, this particular case, that hasn't happened, so bullish is still the expectation for where this thing currently is right now. And it matches what we got here from the week buy of minus 20. That's well underneath. This at minus 38 was a no-go because anything over 30 or even 30 is not going to produce anything of substance and normally. And then we had also the close above the algo at the exact same time. So, I mean, this worked out quite nicely at 2170. We've actually peaked all the way up to 78, so would have captured at least 5+ points out of that move minimum at this particular point, and then just re-entered on dip. We've got a couple positive extremes that got retraced, and that's pretty much what happened if you look at it from down here. So very effective, and then as this gets coded into the algorithm colors and that, it's going to make it very easy to identify. Now, I'm going to certainly go through and show how these things work, but for the most part, the colors are going to dictate, and it's going to be within there. And plus, the colors will dictate based off of a signal, and also what we would consider for normal stop values in that. So there may be times the signal is viable, but we get blocked out of it because it would have reached our effective stop of either 8 points, depending on the configuration. When I run the strategy portion of it, be able to determine exactly what the primary values are. But from a base standpoint, the idea being that we can capture broad sections of moves if I shrink the chart down there, and reach points where we can avoid, where we know that there's an up bias, and we ended up with our magenta in those cases. And so this will be an opportunity to remove some of those that are in conflict with what the general bias should be. And so this is an added way to further refine the paint bars, which will work whether it's case chart, currency. It's not going to matter. The algorithms pretty much behave in a similar fashion, only slight variabilities. And in some of these cases with the strategies, we'll have inputs that can be adjusted for varying time ranges. So all good from that standpoint. If we take a look, there really wasn't anything to talk about with any of the different stocks. We'd seen that they were all, the ones that have the cyan below the red, still holding strong. Others that were starting to express some DOC, cyan moving back above reds, they were fighting it off. So even like Facebook here, still holding below. PCLN was looking good had a little bit of a retest coming back in there, but again, holding well below the red. And as long as that's the place, you're really not worried about anything going on with the market here. We had the DOC spread on Tesla, and it hasn't really moved, and not expecting a whole lot out of it. That's the secondary one that you're going to see a lot, is the changes in the shakeout as we develop more consistent bias signals for shorting, and that are going to come in at varying times. I believe I marked one. It's like right here. If I shrink the DOC, you can see it. This red came in, presets the red trend developing, and it's even before there's a crossover of any kind. And the idea being is that we're going to try and capture as much of these longer trends, even when there's dips, as long as the bias is still within the same and we haven't moved below ABM values, then it's going to stay with the trend, and that will help give longer signals even in shorter time periods. And this way you can be at a small time frame and still effectively control the market as far as we're concerned. And so it makes it very easy, and we're very confident when this short came through where it was headed, and it did exactly that. And at this particular point, slight bullish lead going into the pre-market open. As always, though, I'll keep posting on Skype chat. I'm going to be sending out new passwords for the website since the server, I'm not even going to get into what they did. But anyway, we'll get it back up and going so that everything's set. But for now, I mean, you can see the Skype chat. I put the video links up so you can stay in touch with what's happening. As always, though, continue to look for me there on the Skype chat, and I'll keep posting charts as things get updated, and I'll probably be sending out, hopefully either later today or the latest tomorrow, some of these updates so that you'll be able to have them, particularly when it comes to some of the adjustments in the shakeout. We have the top side done. I haven't finished the shakeout in negative territory and the turnaround points and how that color grading will go. And that'll just make it easy because you'll be able to match your color grading to the chart above, and that should give it a little bit more consistency and ease of visually just recognizing the signal without really having to think about it. Likewise, I'm going to color the dots here to match. So it'll be red when we're in a negative red trend, and then when it flips to a green, you'll end up with green dots, and then visually will make it easy to identify. As always, though, trade well. We'll talk again later.